All right, let's talk about a serious showdown happening right now in the PC gaming world. AMD has just dropped a brand new CPU, the Ryzen 7 9800X3D, and it's gunning for the top spot. The problem? The current king is its own predecessor, the legendary 7800X3D. So, is it time for a new champion? So, let's break this down. In one corner, you've got the 7800X3D. This is the people's champion, right? The CPU that gamers everywhere know and love for its killer performance for the price. And in the other corner, you have the new kid on the block, the 9800X3D, talking a big game about being faster and newer. But, and this is a big but, it's got a secret. Or maybe a few of them.
Okay, first things first, let's just look at the numbers. This is where the 9800X3D really tries to make its case for being the new top dog in gaming.
So what's really going on under the hood? Well, the big deal is the jump to the new Zen 5 architecture. It's just a newer, more efficient design. This lets it crank up the clock speeds, going from 5 gigahertz on the old chip to about 5.2. And really, that's where a ton of this new power is coming from. And what does that mean for your games? Well, it definitely translates. On average, we're seeing about an 8% speed boost in big AAA titles. But get this, in competitive esports games, that lead explodes to a whopping 15%. If you're chasing every frame on a high refresh rate monitor, that is a huge deal. And it gets even crazier. In certain games that really lean on the CPU, like Starfield, that performance gap just, well, it balloons. We're talking a 21% increase. That's not just a small win, that's a massive, undeniable victory for the new chip. You just can't argue with that kind of number.
So based on all that, it seems like a slam dunk, right? If you just want the fastest thing you can buy for pure raw performance, the 9800X3D is the obvious choice. But you probably guessed it, it's not that simple.
Because here's the thing, that whole performance story we just told, it completely flips on its head the moment you crank up your game's resolution.
And this is the question you need to be asking, especially if you have a nice 1440p or 4K monitor. See, all those crazy numbers we just saw, they're mostly from testing at 1080p, which really puts the spotlight on the CPU. But what happens when you're playing at the resolutions most of us with powerful PCs actually use?
Well, just look at this. At 4K, in a game like Cyberpunk 2077, the performance is identical. 106 frames per second on both. The Witcher 3, same story. Resident Evil 4, you get 1 extra frame. That entire 8 to 15% lead we were just talking about, poof, it's gone. And it's all because of something called a GPU bottleneck. Think of it like this. At 4K, your graphics card is working its tail off. It's at 100%, just trying to draw all those pixels on the screen. It becomes the weak link in the chain. So it doesn't matter if you have a super fast CPU. The GPU is the one setting the speed limit. And the truth is, both of these CPUs are already way faster than the GPU needs them to be at that point. Okay, so the performance advantage can disappear depending on your settings. That's one thing. But honestly, that's not even the biggest issue. There's something much more concerning that's been popping up with the new 9800X3D. Listen to this. This comes directly from a gaming cafe owner on Reddit who says they bought 150 of these new CPUs for their PCs. And what are they reporting? The chips are just failing, dying. We're not talking about a small bug here. This is a report of total catastrophic hardware failure. According to this user, out of those 150 chips, 15 of them have died. That's a 10% failure rate. Let me be clear. In the world of CPUs, that is an insane number. It's practically unheard of, and it's raising some pretty serious red flags about reliability. People are describing all sorts of problems, systems that just won't boot up anymore, and even, get this, visible scorch marks on the hardware. Now, nobody knows the exact cause for sure, but the main theory floating around is that some motherboards are feeding the chip way too much voltage right out of the box. And these special 3D V-cache chips are super sensitive to that stuff. Too much voltage can literally kill them. That's why the one thing everyone agrees on is this. If you get one, you need to update your motherboard's BIOS, like yesterday. So you'd think with all these issues bubbling up, they might pump the brakes, right? Nope. AMD is actually pushing things even further for that top-tier money-is-no-object crowd. And that brings us to the Ryzen 7 9850X3D. Basically, you can think of this as the Pro version.
AMD finds the absolute best pieces of silicon from the manufacturing line, the cream of the crop that can run the fastest, and they package it as this ultra-premium chip for people who just have to have the best of the best. But when you look at the actual numbers, a pattern emerges pretty quickly. You're paying a lot more for a lot less. You get an 8% boost in raw clock speed, sure, but that only gives you about a 3% real-world boost in gaming. It is the absolute definition of diminishing returns. Okay, so let's recap. We've got raw speed, we've got the high-res cache, we've got some scary reliability stories, and then we have this super expensive premium version. With all that on the table, how in the world are you supposed to pick one? Let's try to make it simple. You know, the general advice out there is pretty clear-cut. If you're looking for the best overall value, the most performance for your dollar, the old 7800X3D is still the king, no question. But if what you need is the absolute bleeding-edge fastest performance, particularly for competitive esports, then yeah, the new 9800X3D gets the nod.
But we can break it down even further. It really comes down to what kind of person you are. Stick with the 7800X3D if what you want is proven, reliable, awesome performance, especially if you're a 1440p or 4K gamer. The 9800X3D, well, that's for the person who plays competitive games at 1080p, needs every single frame they can get, and this is the important part, is okay with taking on some risk and having to fiddle with things like BIOS updates.
And really, that's what this whole thing comes down to. In the constant race for more performance, how much risk is actually worth the reward? The 9800X3D is no doubt the faster chip when it can stretch its legs. But the 7800X3D is still the people's champion for very, very good reasons. It's a classic battle, and you're the one who has to decide which side you're on.